You know, folks, MAGA goes out of their way on a daily basis to tell us who they are. And I think we really need to be paying attention and listen to what it is they have to say. While they may live in a complete alternate reality to the rest of us, they want to make that alternate reality rule over all of us. After all, MAGA stands for Make America Great Again, and they dream of going back in time. It's what they dream of doing. They dream of taking this country back. And some of these people that dream of taking us back wasn't even alive back then. Like Charlie Kirk. Take a look at him talking about how much he misses the 50s, and then we're going to come back and talk about it.
My advice to the next generation is, embrace tradition. Wind back the clock. Go back to how actually people talked in the 1950s and 60s. You're not allowed to say that. Oh, you're a racist. Okay, there were actually some good things in the 50s and 60s. Like, people were way more polite, and less people had autism. And, I don't know. It was like a more decent country, and people were, like, they knew who their neighbor was. And it wasn't like a crazy thing to, like, walk into a neighbor's house and be like, how you doing? I haven't heard from you in a little bit. Can I make you a meal? And we don't even talk to our neighbors. Like, kids used to go out and play. Now they go and look at their phone all day long. Like, I kind of miss that country. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it was all just, like, bitterness and resentment. I think it was kind of cool when, like, kids walked to class and they had a firearm around their back. Like, I think it was kind of cool. It was actually taught responsibility. It was like, that's a weapon. You better teach it, take it seriously. We didn't have school shootings back then, by the way. People brought guns to school and put them in a locker. It's funny how we had more guns around and there were less school shootings. Like, we didn't have a bunch of kids on benzodiazepines and Zoloft and Prozac and SSRIs. And we didn't have the suicide epidemic. It was a better country in some ways.
So Charlie Kirk misses the 1950s? That's funny to me because he was born in 1993. We're talking about a 30-year-old who fantasizes about a window of time that he wasn't even alive in and knows nothing about. But I promise you, if he had been 30 years old in the 1950s, he would have been really upset when the 60s rolled around. And he would have been really upset when the 70s came rolling in. He would have been one of those guys who would have been standing there squirting ketchup and mustard on the black people's head at the counter. That's who Charlie Kirk is. And he wants to sit and talk about how everyone was more polite back then. Really? Have you not saw Donald Trump? Have you not saw MAGA's act? What is polite about MAGA? What is polite about them? Charlie Kirk's the guy that said we should have the death penalty on TV and kids should watch it. What's so polite about that? And says, oh, it wasn't all bitterness and resentment back then. MAGA's entire movement is built on nothing but bitterness and resentment. What in the hell is this guy even talking about? And of course he had to get his jab in, oh, people didn't have autism back then. Just shows how ignorant and uninformed that he really is. And he had to talk about how children packed guns to school and how much better we were back then because of that. It's absolutely ridiculous. But that's not all he's got to say. He also believes that if you're a Democrat, you can't be a Christian. You cannot be a Christian and vote Democrat. Take a look at this clip.
But to answer your question, no. If you vote Democrat as a Christian, I think you can no longer call yourself a Christian. You have to call yourself something else. I do not think you could be a Christian and vote Democrat.
Thank you for the answer. So listen, you got Democrat friends claiming to be Christians. Pray for them. Witness to them.
So right out of the gate, I'm not a Christian and do not claim to be. I don't believe in it. But I have a whole lot of friends who are Christians and they vote Democrat. My own mother is a Christian who votes Democrat. But my own mother doesn't go to church in this part of the world anymore because anytime she's tried to find a new church where she could feel welcome, the minute that they find out she's a Democrat, she's made to feel so unwelcome that she don't go back. And it's because of that bullshit mentality of people like Charlie Kirk. You know, there are good Christian people out there who votes Democrat, and that's their business. And they live a good, clean life, and they live a life much closer to the teachings of Jesus than the MAGA people I see running around. And if you're going to sit and talk about, oh, you need to witness to people. Well, if you're going to witness to people, you might want to not have Donald Trump as your front runner. You might not ought to have him as your lead example. You might not ought to have Lauren Boebert out giving hand jobs in theaters and then telling people to chase Jesus. Because when you look like hypocrites like that, you're never going to win over us non-believers. I'm never going to reconcile with it. First of all, I don't believe in it. And second of all, even if you try to talk me into it, you're going to have a really hard time talking me into coming back into a building full of those kind of assholes. And it's a shame that there's good people out there who actually lives by the teachings of Jesus, and they get demonized because of their political affiliations. It's absolute bullshit. But Charlie Kirk ain't stopping there. This is a clip that I want us to keep. Everybody bookmark this video. Everybody save this one. because he's saying that if they lose this election, they're going to have to fight. So let's be sure we keep this clip and play it again if all hell breaks loose. But go ahead and roll it now.
Talk about this upcoming election, how important this is, how critical this is, and what the church can be doing to make a difference. So, well, so that this doesn't happen again. We got to do something.
I love the question. And so I'm going to start unusually. I want to make sure that we all make a commitment that if this election doesn't go our way, the next day we fight. That's a very important thing. And I know I get golf applause because a lot of people don't want to hear that. They say, what do you mean it doesn't go our way? It has to go our way. We have to win. I agree. But if your answer is no, I'm not going to fight if I don't get my way, then you are a summer, sunny, what they called in the Sunshine Patriot, not ready for the winter storm. And there were a lot of people, by the way, that were all on board for the American Revolution as long as it was 73 degrees and sunny. And as soon as they had to march through the winter and fight a smallpox epidemic, they said, forget this, liberty sounds nice, but I like the King George a lot. So they kind of got out of the way. So you have to commit yourself to that.
So yeah, let's be sure and save that clip, because the day is going to come that Charlie Kirk's going to say, I never said that. I never said we should fight. And there he is saying we should fight. That's MAGA's agenda, folks. They want to take us back to the 1950s. You can't be a Christian and vote Democrat, and if they lose, they're going to fight like hell. That is the talking points that they're going to keep driving home. But the reason Charlie Kirk wants to go back to the 50s, I'm sure he would love to go back to a time when people like him could rule over everybody and everybody else stayed quiet. But he sure wouldn't have liked it when the 60s rolled in. He sure wouldn't have liked it when the 70s rolled in. And he doesn't like it now because he doesn't want anybody out there to be woke. And when I say woke, what I mean by that is to be aware of people's struggles, to be aware of what's going on in the world, and awake to the world around you. That's what it means. It doesn't mean this whole idea that, there's a woke mind virus. It's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. Somebody points out that something we used to say was racist and then gets told they have a mind virus for pointing it out. Oh, you should have never pointed that out. We should have just kept telling that tasteless joke for another 50 years. It's absolutely ridiculous at their mindset. I'm not opposed to learning about new things. I'm not opposed to learning about people's struggles. I'm not opposed to hearing them out. And if I hear out someone else and their struggles, it doesn't mean that I don't have my own. It doesn't mean that my family didn't have their own. It just means you're not an asshole, Charlie. That's all it fucking means. People like him, they absolutely, a 30-year-old sitting crying wanting to go back to the 50s. Put him on a time machine and send him back. And then let's just have a reality show where we watch him roll into the 1960s and get all upset. I can't imagine what he would have thought about the Beatles. I can't imagine what he would have thought about Martin Luther King. I can't imagine what he thought about Malcolm X. I can't imagine what he'd have thought about Roe versus Wade getting put in place. So yeah, if we could, in a perfect world, if we could have a time machine reality show where Charlie Kirk goes back and relives all of that, it would be pretty damn entertaining, because he would be doing the same thing he's doing today, and that's being a prick.